when we came.
Well, okay. So
Stop.
where we're going to start, you're going to introduce yourself. You're going to introduce yourself. Say who you are, and then the context of, I've been here in Monterey for 64 years. I've been in Monterey for
Forever.
forever. All right.
I'm not saying how many years I would be here. Then the people
Doesn't
are gonna
say.
think,
No, nobody
no,
will
I'm
know.
only kidding. I'm only
You could have been born here.
almost.
Okay, I'm Janet Cohen Feldman, and I came to Monterey as a child for summers in 1956, and I've lived in this house ever since for summers. So this is the first year that we've converted. We've sold our house in Mount Kisco, and we've moved here for half the year. And so now I am a Monterey resident officially, and happy to be here. And this is my good friend Georgiana, who's been here longer than I, and is like a big sister to me.
Yes.
Yes.
We rented. We came. Georgiana Eschen. My family rented the big house up on the hill, the Scott House, and we did that for 12 years. And then we bought all the property at the beginning of the road, and each one of my family built a house, and we've been coming here since I'm 6 years old. Every summer, every holiday, we never missed, and then everyone in my family moved here when they retired. I came before that, and then my daughter came on because she opened a restaurant in Great Barrington, which we ran for 10 and a half years. And we're still here, enjoying it, and I go away in the winter for a couple of months, work at the Red Lion Inn.
Maybe you want to go back. Way back. And what it was like when you got here.
When I got here, there were all of 8 houses on Sylvan and Point Road. No children whatsoever for me to play with. So actually, the first year we were here, I was rather lonely, and I had a kid brother that is maybe 8 or 9 years my junior. So my mother was looking for a little help, and she met Georgiana at the public beach and hired Georgiana to be a mother's helper. So she really was responsible for Richard, but I was kind of thrown in as the package deal. So every day Georgiana would come and pick up my brother in the stroller and walk all the way to Monterey to get my mom's mail, and I would tag along. And
we would go up to Parker Harmon's gas station
Yeah.
because there was a parrot there. And Richard loved the parrot because the parrot talked. And that was when we would sit and talk with Peg, who was the wife of Parker, and spend a little time by candy for Richard.
I bought my first pack of cigarettes in Parker Harmon's store. I remember that very specifically. I was a little older than 10, but my first pack of cigarettes came from Parker Harmon's gas station. So,
And if we didn't have ice cream at Parker's, in the afternoon, if we went back, we went to Tryon's tea room, and we would have our snacks there.
Right. We also would stop at the general store that at the time was managed by the Minor Brothers.
Yeah.
And they
were
had
good to us.
2 things that I wish our general store still had. One of which was a huge wheel of cheese that came from Vermont. And if you asked, he would just cut off a little piece, a wedge, depending on how much you wanted. And it was by far the best cheese. So I miss that. Years later, under a different ownership, somebody baked honey buns. You had the
Cake bread.
recipe, but I've never mastered it. I'm not such a master baker. Georgiana's the baker lady, but I still have written in my mom's hand that recipe, and nobody's ever equaled it. And she was a diabetic, and she had never tasted these
Honey buns.
honey
that she
buns, I
made.
guess, sticky buns, but they were the best. So again, second item that I wish our general store carried today. They also had canisters and canisters of penny candy. So, you know, if you
And
have...
patience with
Oh,
children.
yeah,
The
yeah,
Minor
yeah.
Brothers had
Yeah.
patience of Job.
Right.
They used to sell the children nails. We'd go upstairs and they would weigh nails because the boys were building forts all the time. There were very few children around, so I had 4 cousins that were boys. And that's what they did. So well, that was another thing when we
Remember,
would all
that's true.
walk, remember?
That's true.
Who are your cousins?
Well, first my brother, Richard Grassis, and Paul Wandrash, Bill Mency, and Tom Mency. Bill is no longer with us, but Tommy is. He just redid the house over here, and because he's a grandpa now, and they needed a little more room. And what else did they do down at the general store? They were
Well,
so
we would
great with
go
us.
upstairs. They had a whole
Yeah,
bunch of
that's where we-
taxidermy things
Yes.
upstairs. Pardon?
Rocks. They had that whole rock collection.
A rock
Oh,
collection.
that's right. Yes,
Yeah,
they did.
yeah.
They had a rock collection.
And they would hand grind chopped meat. Georgiana's grandmother
My
would
grandmother would send us 5 pounds of chopped meat, and they
and they would
trimmed it. It would take only about 2 hours, but we were gone that long. And then we'd walk back and get Richard in the carriage. Her brother was the youngest. So we would all head back, bring everything to Grandma. My grandmother lived to 103, and she cooked till she was 102.
Did she live here?
She did. She lived up on the corner of Tyringham and Hoopi. She was in the big house. Originally, we all rented. But then when my uncle retired, she lived with my uncle, they used to split their time between here and Silver Street. But that got to be too much, and then they bought the house there was Giorgio's house.
Back to the Minor Brothers, they had a brother-in-law, Mr. Abercrombie, who was our local librarian, and he also had unlimited patience. And if you came in,
Yes.
he would just, your eyes were, he would just waltz you around the entire library till you found the perfect book. And that was important because, like I said, there were very few kids to play with. So years down the line, Franny Amadon moved here, and then it brought in not only summer people but local people, and we took Red Life, life-saving lessons. So that was a venue that I greatly appreciated because we got to meet a lot of kids, and that was a lot of fun. And she also was grand with patience and indulgence, and she would come with a big basket with her kids and throw them on the beach.
They lived in Great Barrington at the time, remember when they first
Well,
came?
when they first came, they did, yes.
And she used to
But
come
prior
every
to
day.
that, it was Shaw,
Sure,
Helen Shaw.
Miss Helen Shaw
gave
gave
swimming
my
lessons.
brother
Right.
swimming lessons, yes.
Yeah.
And there was no town beach. You had to know how to swim, but we were allowed to walk to the point because there was a natural beach there and because we rented, and so a couple
I
of
don't remember that.
yeah, that's
I don't remember
that's where-
anything on the point other than the old Fen house that Henry Phelps had built, and I don't think there were any houses on
Stone's house, down at the point, out, all the way out.
the one.
That they lived from Hartsville, the ones from Hartsville.
I
don't
thought their
remember
name
that?
was something different. But anyway, that's the only house that was on Point Road that I remember as a kid. And I do remember spending a lot of time, a few years later, Bob Hebert, and at the time he was engaged to Linda, they would come and they had a boat. They didn't even have the A-frame at the time. And
He had the ski lift and they
a
used to have the
ski lift. They
jump.
would water ski and go over a lift.
That was Sunday's entertainment.
They would have a flying saucer, and they'd put a stool on it and stand and spin around in circles. Bob even built a kite
Yeah,
that
that's
his
right.
brother-in-law, Walt Jones, would drive, and Bob would go flying up in the air. It was something that he had seen on a trip to Florida, and he came home and he spent one whole winter building it and decided to try it out. And the other thing that they had was, I don't think you're going to, there you go, I guess you can. They had an amphibi car. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
So it was a little car, it was turquoise, and it drove down the road, and then it would drive into the lake, and it would circle around a few times and drive back. So that was a lot of fun. So that was our entertainment. That and the Gottlieb girls, I don't know if you remember them or not, but Cookie and Janet Gottlieb and their older brother, Randy. Sandy, there you
Randy
go.
was the
Had a
son.
little skimmer with a 15 horsepower engine.
Yeah,
So that was the biggest boat or the fastest boat on the lake at the time, and they would go zipping by and they would water ski quite a bit. So that
And there was nothing on that side of the lake. That
Right.
was all Mr. Schwab's property.
Property,
And
yeah.
he owned the egg farm. And that
There was
part
one. There
of-
was one cottage right near your home, actually,
Right.
that did exist because Wally Parks would come across. He'd leave a canoe in on the property right next to the house, and he'd push the canoe in, and he would fish the lake every single night. So he was around, and his sister Pat was also around. And once in a while, she would ride a horse. I don't know where. Maybe it was from Stanley Pappas down at Avalon School. It might have been their horse. I don't know for sure. Because another little gal, Jeannie Rinesmith, that was a local girl living with her mom and her aunt, would also come from Avalon School on a horse. And I know once in a while I'd get to ride that pony up and down. So that was a big thrill. And she was related to somebody that bought on the point, one of the earlier houses, the Burhan family, Bill Burhan. Somehow they were I'm not sure how they were related. They were cousins, but I'm not sure how the relationship grew, but they were definitely cousins.
We also used to help out at Tryon's farm. We used to go down in the morning while they milked the cows, watch them pasteurize the milk, and we'd help them put it into the baskets. And Pat Hebert one summer drove she was the delivering person, and I would go with her, and we would get out into each house that we delivered milk to. That was another thing.
The other thing you could do with Tryon was the house that Ann White, I don't know if she still owns that house.
Oh, right.
Ann White's
Well,
house.
that's where the barn was.
That's where the barn was, and you could go, and on your honor, you could sign out, 3 quarts of milk for the week, and just, and at the end of the month, you
Had a
had to
bill.
pay up, and that was it. And when that stopped, somebody else, a woman named Marion, would come up and down the road with a pickup truck, and she would deliver eggs.
she lived on
If you
Sanders
wanted
Street.
eggs, you could get eggs, and that was after the chicken farm was no longer
No longer
working.
there.
Prior to that, we'd go to Schwab's.
Yeah, we handled eggs at the
Right,
chicken
right,
farm.
right,
and for
right.
pay, we got a dozen eggs at the end of the week.
So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we did. We had wonderful experiences growing up.
It was a lot of, my dad was a fisherman, that's why we got here. He would every year go in search of fish. So my mother would have to pick up her whole family and go to really rural surroundings where there was no running water and outhouses, and it was a little difficult with young children to do that. So finally, as a concession, my father said, fine, we'll just buy a house on a lake. But my mom was not a swimmer, and she wasn't very...
She did take swimming
She did from
lessons
Helen
Shaw.
Shaw.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things Georgiana had to do, how to get us out of the house when Helen would come here to give my mom swimming lessons, because my mother did not want to pass that fear on to us that we, would not be able to swim or should be fearful of the water. So interesting. And she also had unlimited patience. I used to go when I was a teenager, when there were more kids around, we'd all pile in a car, we'd go over the hill to Otis, and in the Grange they would have square dancing every Friday night, and that was an awful lot of fun. I enjoyed
We
You ever
also
do
had
that?
the square dancing right here in the Grange.
Well, I never did
I'm
that.
older than you.
I never did that here.
By two.
Only at Otis. Only in Otis did I, yeah.
No, I did that there. Here.
The other thing we have in town is the Brookbend Inn. I think now it's a condominium, and it was owned by a family. Their name was Staples. I think her name was Audrey, and he was
Right.
Haviland.
And everyone was a waitress there.
Yeah, that was my. Well, before I was a waitress, allowed to be a waitress, I was a dishwasher with Skippy Amadon. He and I washed dishes together, and then the following year I got promoted to being a waitress. And that was kind of challenging because you had people that would come, older people, it seemed, were very attracted to coming to this inn, and they would stay for a month, maybe a month and a half, and they only served breakfast and dinner, but you would have these same patrons for over a month, and when it was time to leave, they would maybe give you a tip of $5, $10, and it was so frustrating because you had really been so patient and so dedicated, hoping to get a bigger tip, but they were not big tippers. Anybody that came to Brookbend Inn certainly was not a big tipper, but it was a lot of fun, and I remember the last year I worked, Cookie Gottlieb was the hostess, so she would seat everybody, and that was a lot of fun, actually.
I remember when Lenny and Cynthia Weber came to town, and they had the barn.
The barn,
next to
yeah.
the brook bend where they painted.
That is true.
And
yeah.
we used to stop there all the
All
time.
the time.
Remember when
They
we
lived
walked up there?
in the hayloft. They slept in the hayloft. They still lived in Manhattan at the time. And I don't think they had any running water in that barn. I think that the Staples must have let them use the toilet and the tub or bathroom in the inn. But they stayed there. So the barn part was his gallery where he painted and he displayed his works. And they
people
slept in this
came
little
there,
bunk.
yeah.
They were very bohemian and very cool people. Absolutely, yes. What else do you remember?
Well, you remember more than I do, but it's all coming back to me now.
Is it?
Oh,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
What year did you come?
What did we come in, 1965?
65. You were the girl that cut her leg with a propeller? Were you the one of the Germain children?
No, it's a friend of ours.
Oh, okay. Because I remember, I wasn't here when that happened, but I remember
'Cause
my
Howie
father
went.
being so, Rose and
Yeah,
Howie.
Howie,
Yeah,
yeah.
Howard.
Yeah,
Two of them
yeah,
came and they
yeah,
rescued
yeah,
her, they
yeah.
brought her to the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember that.
So where are we?
We were at Brook Bend Inn.
What?
What came
Want
after
Georgia
that?
to
Huh?
do
She's fine.
That's okay. I'm fine. I can just back her up.
No, I was thinking, looking at Wendy instead of me.
Oh.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's okay.
The other thing I remember is the roadside store was a gas
Emma.
station. We had not one but two gas stations in Monterey, and it was run by a woman, Emma. I don't remember Emma's last name, and her man, Harvey. And they lived in that little shed in the back of the gas station. So we would always get gas there, and also inside there were candy and treats and magazines.
A little counter as well.
A counter?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she used to do sandwiches.
And she was very sweet, indulgent. The restaurant off of Lake Buell, where you got married.
Oh, Hillside.
Hillside. She was related, somehow connected to the people that owned the Hillside
Rose.
restaurant. Rose.
Rose.
Yes, they were sisters, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Was that gas station there the same time that Millie's?
Same as Parker Harmon and Roadside. We had two gas stations.
And then Millie took over.
Millie took over, that's right.
Who's
Yeah.
Millie?
Millie was the one who went blind eventually.
Who's Millie?
Brooke's
What-
mother. Brooke's mother.
I don't know who you're talking about.
She's a Pedersen.
But where?
Right.
Where
What
the
store?
Parker Harmon was.
Oh, okay.
Remember when?
No, it was a
when-
young man. I remember that he.
That was late, but his mom was the one originally.
Oh, okay.
And then
he was
Brooke-
very handy
Yeah.
with cars
With
and
cars,
repairs.
yeah, he
I
did.
remember.
He up until
right.
not long ago, Mary
Right,
Ann used to
right.
have her car taken care of there all the
The
time.
other thing that was a lot of fun for my children as we got older was going to Gould Farm. That was
Oh,
a daily.
that was every night
a
we did
daily
that.
activity. We did it in the morning, and we would go. We'd bring a little bit of bread. We'd feed the.
We'd bring carrots, feed the horses.
Yeah.
Every night that was.
And they were
part of
very
it.
indulgent. I know my oldest boy was a little itchy. He was active, hyperactive, and a few times we were asked
To
to
say the
leave
least.
because he just wasn't on his best behavior that day. But it was killed a lot of time, and it was an activity. It was the high point of his day. He'd wake up very early, so my husband and David and Matthew too would show up at that farm maybe by 6:30 in the morning, and would spend a half an hour to an hour walking around on the grounds.
Also, as we got older, we used to go to Wellman's Pond and swim. Do you remember
I
that?
never did
you
that
never
either.
came?
No,
We used to do that. And well, when we had the problem, when we had to rebuild the dam, here
Oh, we used to
from the
go.
lake, we had to find other places to swim because there was bacteria in the lake because of all the work they were doing. So we went to Beartown to swim.
Beartown. I remember going
We
there.
go to Wellman Pond to
Right.
swim. We had
That
to
I
find
never
other
did.
places.
Right, yeah.
To,
I do remember, speaking of Beartown, it was one of our first big adventures, and it was the best fun with your brothers. I don't know if you came or not.
When you
we
walked to the
went on a
fire?
hike, and our goal was to get to the fire observation
Mm-hmm.
center at Beartown State Park. And we left early in the morning with food and with water and canteens. And
Yes.
I guess we did not return on time, or what was assumed our natural return time And so at some point, I think your one of your uncles or your parents
They were,
had to
yeah,
come
they were panicking.
rescue us, yeah, because we were too
Also,
long.
we used to walk around the lake. We used to leave here and walk down Hoopi Road all the way around through 23. That was an outing for the day. We'd pack a picnic lunch, and we had lots of fun fishing, swimming. Lads Beach
Watching
wasn't
every single
there.
one of these houses go up.
Yeah, we did do that.
Yeah, 'cause
That was
like I said,
exciting.
yeah, that was exciting. 'cause
Henry Phelps used to dig the well with his own
Right,
shovel.
Right, right. Yeah, he was very handy. My parents relied on him a great deal. He built a lot of the stone
he
walls that
was
are on our property, and my father used to like to have steps that had birch bark and slate. And every year Henry would come with several birch trees that he had cut down for my father to size down to make steps down to the lake. So that was
Henry was really the only man that was here during the week because all the men went back to the city to work. So if anything went wrong, we went up to Henry, and that was where the Vedders live now. That was the house they would move to in the summer. Then they lived in a cottage, remember, down at the far end when he was building Ginsberg's house,
right.
which wasn't Ginsberg's
Right.
originally. I'm trying to think.
And then he
It was
built the
built-
house that your grandparents, your grandmother and your uncle.
Yes, he built that
And-
house, which
yes.
was where Tommy
Tommy
lives
lives,
now.
yes.
He built that house and never quite finished it when
The
we bought it. It
very
was-
end of the road, it was a bit, and it's still there. It's big. The same house exists. It's never been redone. A lady named Gibby Smith lived in that house, and she was married to a doctor from Great Barrington, and she had a heavy foot on the pedal. She would come speeding down this road
Yes.
way too fast, and she would always invite you in for cookies. She was just the sweetest lady. And then they sold it to the Doan family, and now I think it's a land trust for all of the siblings, all of the Doan, Russ, and I
The
guess
whole
there
group,
must
eh?
be 4 or 5 siblings, and I don't know how many grandchildren. So a lot of children use that house to this day in its original form, and it's a beautiful piece of property. That's
Because she jets right out into the big lake.
for a while. Marcella Doan was an artist, and she would come where the Levitt houses. Did you know Marcella? Did you know Marcella Doan? No. Well, she was quite an artist. She was really very talented. So she would come and she would just use the house where Lynn Levitt has just built a new house, and it was just a little house, and she would just come for the day to paint.
Right. Then she sold it to Larry Silk.
And then she sold it to Larry Silk, and then they sold it to
to Lynn Levitt.
Levitt and her husband Aaron. Yeah. So, but
It was
then they bought this big house from Gibby Smith because they really found that they really enjoyed Tom and the Lake. So that was quite nice. And what else did we do? We had a lot of my father one year. This was years down the road in maybe 75. There was a big tree that right
when
off
you're
of-
standing.
right where you're almost standing. And he said, instead of cutting it down, I'm just going to skim all the branches off and lop off the top, and I'm going to carve a totem pole out of it. And he built the scaffolding, and actually Georgiana's husband helped a little bit. Everybody kind of did a little bit of work to make this
Yeah,
a
my husband
reality.
used to sculpt in lead, but
And,
he did the wood with melt.
It took maybe 2 seasons, and they painted it, and it was just the most beautiful totem pole. We still have a few pieces. It wasn't lopped off at the base, so ants got to it, or termites, and
Yeah, and they had really preserved the wood, but they didn't know
I
enough
have-
to do that part.
I have 3 pieces. 2 pieces usually hang on the porch, but we put them away because we're closing up for the season. And 1 piece is still on the mantle above the fireplace from the original totem pole. And my brother has a few pieces, and he now lives in Maine, so he took that with him. But that was a lot of fun. And when we got all finished, we had a huge party, and everybody on the
We
road
all
came.
dressed as Indians.
And everybody dressed up in costume.
Yeah, we had a really
And so
good
we had a lot of fun doing
know,
that.
Bonner's father,
No,
David McAllister.
no. I
Well,
don't.
I know who he is.
I mean, I know who he is
Yeah.
from reading his articles in the paper, but I don't know this man. Yeah. What else did we do? We went to We'd go to Pittsfield. We did. I don't know everybody else. Once a year, back to school for shopping. We'd go to England Brothers and the Berkshire Coat Factory, and that was definitely
our
a
big trip.
major.
Mhm.
That was a major outing, and you get your notebook and your supplies for the whole year, and that was another highlight for me, going back to school with clothes that I had purchased in the Berkshires, and it was always, I always found a lot of
Yeah,
things.
and we all came up. I mean, we were here holidays in the winter. I remember coming down when your father wanted a goose and your mother made.
Yeah, we didn't do that until my parents winterized, and that maybe was a few years before he passed away. So that was mid-70s, and from then on we would come to ski at Butternut, and we
Yeah.
would come to spend holidays. Prior to that, this house was not insulated or heated adequately, so we would just come from maybe mid-April, when the pipes had a chance to thaw out, to maybe October 15th. So it was just part-time, and it was a weekend thing. Although my mother stayed here all summer, with or without my father, with or without children. She loved being here, so that was
We were
her
all
passion.
here.
Yeah.
None of the women went home. The men used to take Monday and Friday off. They just go home for a few days and come back. Because there weren't computers where they could work from here like the men can now. You don't have to be in
When we got here, we had a party line, a telephone that we shared with 5 other families. So our phone was Great Barrington 1415W1. So it was just one ring. But if the phone rang 2 times or 3 times, then you knew it wasn't for you. But again, on a rainy day when there was nothing to do, every once in a while, a little naughty girl might pick up and listen to somebody else's conversation. And we were real good friends with the Rosens. He and my dad were really, really best buddies. And I think Howard was 5 rings on the line. So for him to call us or for us to call him was quite the challenge, because we had the same number but different number of rings. So you'd call, you'd have to hang up, and you could hear his phone ringing and hope that he would pick up. So it was really quite the adventure. And years ago, nobody had a washing machine. So Monday morning, everybody packed up the car and off you went to Great Barrington to use the laundromat and the dryer. That was a Monday morning special for every single woman that summered here. So that was, maybe midweek you did some grocery shopping, and Friday you cleaned up a little bit, did a little cooking, but the whole
little,
week,
we did
yeah,
a lot.
The whole week had its
We
order.
the woman in the laundromat one Monday asked me which B&B I had.
Yeah,
That's
you'd
how
go
much
with a lot
company
of
I used to
laundry.
have.
Yeah, yeah.
And bedding and towels.
Right.
And everyone water skied, and they take a different towel, not one beach
Right,
towel. They have
right.
a company, so they took 3 down there, and it
So-
was quite interesting.
The other thing, this lake I think has been fished over many times over, but in years ago, there were so many pickerel and bass and pike and trout. And my father would sit right on our dock, and he would reel in huge basses. Your brother,
My
your
son,
uncle,
my son
your
caught the
son,
biggest
a lot of
bass in the
people.
lake. I spent a lot of money at Chet's, who was the taxidermy in Lee. And what I used to do was, as the children were growing up, when they went fishing, if they caught a sizable fish, they would bring it down to me. And at that time, I lived on the water there. And I would take a Polaroid picture. I would log in how much it weighed and what kind of fish. And on August 15th, I decided who was going to get the award
Oh,
for
the awards, the
biggest
fishing
fish.
awards.
And I'd go up to Pittsfield, and I'd have the awards made for the pickerel, the bass, and the trout.
But even the kids that didn't really catch major fish, Georgiana was always kind and dear. My son being one of the
And
recipients
Howard Rosen, he wanted it, so
recipients.
we had to get men in it then too.
Of a few fishing trophies for undersized fish that also were
Yes, everyone
taken
did.
from
But
the lake.
it was
Thank
in
you.
memory. I did it in memory of my husband's grandfather, who was a commercial fisherman. So it was called the Phil Pizzuti Award. And my son still has all
Does
those
he?
awards. Yeah.
I think actually
Santa
my
Fe.
son David still on his
And
bookshop
Howie had it
does
in
have
his office,
yeah. So
with
that
the
was-
with the one that he had Chet do. And I went in and there. I said, I don't believe that you have this here. He said, yes. big thing I bought.
There you go.
So that was a fun thing. And my son's birthday was September 1st, so we had a big open house to give the awards and have my son's birthday cake.
The other thing, it was a very social road once houses started to come, and just about every weekend somebody
Had a
would
cocktail
have
party.
a cocktail party, and it would be very informal, and it wouldn't be very fancy food, but everybody would get together, we'd have a drink, a glass of wine, some.
We got very dressed
just-
up. We wore long
yeah,
dresses all the time.
sometimes.
Long dresses.
Yeah, well,
And then sometimes we'd go out afterwards. We'd go
Yeah,
over
yeah.
to Oak and Spruce.
yeah, that's true
And-
too, yeah. Have a
And
lot
then
of
we
fun.
had a big end of the year dinner.
Yes, yes.
Every Labor
Well-
Day at a restaurant.
I think Ladd's Beach was responsible for that because they like to have an end
Well,
of
we
the year
did.
something.
We did the 4th of
They
July
sponsored,
picnic
yeah.
on Ladd's Beach. I was younger then, and had a lot of
Wow.
energy. Catered, and I'd collect the money, and
Right.
I had a
That's
committee,
true.
and everybody would help. And
We weren't members of Ladd's Beach because we had waterfront property and we were not deeded to be a member. So we were just associate members. So we were allowed to come to some of the parties, but not
no,
really.
your father, and
Right.
several of us who felt that we should be paying the insurance for the beach because it kept getting higher, because the children wanted to play there.
Yes, that's
They
true
didn't
too.
want to
Yes.
swim on our lakefronts.
Right, right.
And that's how
Yeah, it was a
Ladd's
very
Beach
sociable thing
started
for
to
the
take in
kids.
associate
Not in my
members.
generation, but in your brother
Yeah.
and my brother's generation.
Right.
Maybe 10 years.
I was the secretary. One year I wanted to know how much pay I was getting. Every job I worked, I never worked as hard as I worked there for no pay. But we got it to be a trust. We changed it to a trust, and after that there was no problems. So
What
that's
else
it.
do
And
you
now
have?
everybody's grown up, and now all the
Yeah, very
grandchildren
few
come.
of the original people are still here that were on this lake when I was growing up. There, one family, Bob McMahon, I think he lives in Otis. He's an architect. Actually, he designed
He
your
designed
cousin's
Tommy's
house.
house, yeah.
He was here, and his cousins were here on Brewer's
Brewer's
Circle.
yeah. And Jackie Drummond, actually, she brought her whole family in
was-
today.
yeah.
They were in from Mississippi.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Clarence house was, because my father drew a little map that I still have
I
in
still
the
have
back
that
room.
map too.
And it denoted that Clarence house and the house where Jackie Drummond lives now, both of those pieces of property were Drummond pieces of property
Right.
back. And Bob Hammer's nephew, I think, lives in his house. That was an original house that was here. And I think now his nephew, he was a plumber in Great Barrington, and he would come out, a bachelor, had no family, but he really
had a
enjoyed the lake.
girlfriend.
Huh?
He had
He had a
a-
girlfriend,
he had a
maybe
lady
he had a
friend.
girlfriend, but he was not married, and he had no children, and he was our plumber in addition to a neighbor. So he opened the water and drained the water at the end of the season for us, and spent every weekend here at the lake. I remember that.
And then little by little,
Yeah.
they made Ladd's Beach because Ladd's Beach was not a beach. That was a place
Yeah,
where there
it's-
were all stumps where everybody's lures got stuck. But when Ashworth, Darling, Stevens, let's see,
Darling,
I said Darling. Remember Lee Darling, Ashworth, Lankenau.
Lankenauer.
They formed a corporation and they bought the point and they developed it.
Well, they bought all, yeah,
Yeah.
most all of the property, and they bought it for very little, maybe
They
50,000.
offered it to us for very little. My
Maybe-
grandmother said, no, none of these children are going to want to come when they grow up. What are we going to do with all of that?
Maybe $50,000 for
Mhm.
the entire two sides of the road and all of Point Road. It was an enormous amount of property. And the Hebert family put in a water system because there were no wells on Point Road, and they supplied everybody with water on the back roads.
And Ladd's Beach was formed for people who bored in the woods and it had no waterfront.
So
And
then they
was-
artificially made that little peninsula that they use as Ladd's Beach, but that was not part of the original lay of the land back then
right.
at all. And the house where Dean and Fran Amadon lived for many years on the lake, that was called Blank's Landing. And people would come, and that would be the start-off point for them to come down and look at property. And a house way back where Billy Band lives, was a model house, and it was a
Right.
show. It was a show
It's
house for
Ruthie's
people to
house.
come to
Ruthie
model.
Gordon's house.
And if you like this house, we can construct a house very similar. And I think Jim Stevens was the contractor that built most of the houses, the Lankwood, and
Well, not Lankenauer bought that. He built that for Clara, his wife, because they had the estate up on the
Right.
Church Road.
but I think Jim Stevens was the one. Jim Stevens built this
I know.
house.
I watched him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then he built
Doris.
most of the houses
Doris.
on Point Road.
Yeah.
And the other guys were just money people. I think they did not do the construction. I think they just provided the money or were an investor in the project. But I think
Hebert
that
did some.
Hebert did the water and
Yeah,
some buildings,
and some,
and Jim Stevens
Excavating.
did some of the
But
most of the buildings.
Lankenauer had that house built for Clara so that she could water ski with her 5 children.
Oh,
That was what that was. That was a
Oh.
real party house,
Was it? I don't know.
just like Mr.
Okay.
Lankenauer.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. I also remember there was, I had it now, we were close to Lankenauer, Ashworth, Darling, something about
Stevens. There was a
Stevens,
before.
something else that that they were involved in terms of an investment. It'll come to me. I'll come back to that. Let's see what else I do remember.
The soda
what else?
fishes,
Oh, the Camp family. Betsy Camp. She was here. I think she's older than I. She has children that are a little bit younger than I. But I can remember sitting on the dock, and she was quite the athletic woman. And she would whiz her boat around and take her kids water skiing. And we didn't have a boat that went that fast, and that was something that was never going to happen to me at the time. But I would watch both Pipper and his sister, Jessica, I think her name is,
Yeah, Jess.
and they would spin around. And
Well,
then
Grandpa owned Whitestone.
right, Whitestone's
Whitestone.
own,
That was-
that little house was their house.
And he and the grandmother lived there.
Right.
And then Betsy bought the house
Right.
up on Hoop High.
But we didn't know them, but I used to watch
Pippa was a good friend
with
of my
envy.
brother's.
Oh my goodness, what fun that
Well,
would
they
be.
had the first inboard.
That would be so, but this was even before inboards.
When they
This
first
was,
had, yeah, I know, I remember.
But I remember finally my father convinced the Gottlieb girls to give it a try. I had to demonstrate that I could swim all the way to the island and back.
We all did
And
that,
if I
yes.
could do that, then I could give it a try to water ski. And I got up on my first try, to everybody's surprise, and it was just
Including
the
you.
most fun, including me. And that is the truth. That is
Mhm.
the truth. But that was a lot of fun. That was a major accomplishment. After watching a few other people water ski for maybe 2 or 3, 4 years, I must have been maybe 14 before I actually got the chance to give that a try. So that was a major accomplishment as far as I was concerned. They were very indulgent to me and would make sure that at least once a weekend they would take me for one spin around the lake. So that was always very, very nice. The older sister, the older Gottlieb girl, Janet, for one summer, their mom, Seal Gottlieb, I don't know if anybody remembers Seal, she said her girls had to have a job. They had to have some kind of employment, some sort of income. So the father, I guess, sold used cars in Brooklyn. So the girls always had a car. So Janet said, well, you know, for gas money and for earning,
He
I
wouldn't
will
give her
run-
money for gas, so we had to get a job, right?
her job was, she was the garbage lady. And she would come.
Oh, yeah.
She would come and pick up
She'd
our
go to
garbage
the dumps.
twice a week, and she'd fill up her trunk with our 2 garbage pails and take them off to the dump and come back and
That must have
return
been
them.
when she had the big car, because then she had the
But she-
Triumph. She
she-
had the Triumph.
Oh no, this
Couldn't
goes
have taken
back. This
garbage
goes
in
back.
there.
They had the first year she did that. She had a Chevy convertible, and she would pack the garbage pails in the trunk. Then the girls had a share. It was a Buick Special, and there were very few of them around. And I guess they also sped up and down the country roads a bit. But Seal prided herself, there's only one car that looks like this, and all the policemen know that this car belongs in this driveway, so they let me know if my girls have misbehaved. And those girls did once in a while. They were a little naughty.
Yeah, the state troopers
They were
would
good
come in the
girls. They were a
morning
lot
and
of fun.
we'd hear all about it.
And, yeah,
They didn't have anything else to
No.
do. What did we do? They took the bell from the tower and put it at Gould Farm. These
Yeah, we
are the
would do
things
little
kids
naughty
did
things,
to do
yeah, like that.
to
yeah.
amuse themselves.
Right. This is true.
So anyway, it was
And
great growing up here.
It was, yes. Face me?
Yeah.
Hello there. And Georgiana and I have been friends. We've had happy times, sad times. We
Mhm.
have definitely
Been through a lot of things.
a lot of
together.
things together, and we're kind of joined at the hip with our co-joined experiences. And
And now Janet's going to come to Florida, so
yes,
we can
I'm
see
moving.
each other in
Yeah,
the winter
she's
too.
a Florida winter person, and this is going to be my first adventure, or first give it a hand and see if I like it. But I'm sure I'm going to like it. This year I finally retired. Been teaching my whole life, so it's the first year. Today I would have returned to school, so today's the first year in forever, maybe 38 years, that I have not had a classroom to. So that's a little sad, but it's
Bittersweet.
a young person's game, and
Another phase.
yep, a new
Another
chapter,
phase.
a new chapter. So I am officially retired, and my husband's going to retire in another
Week or two?
so he says, but I think he'll still have a finger in a pot, doing a few things, stirring a little bit on the side. So we will see.
And your children come up?
Pardon? My children? My children. My oldest boy is very connected. He's single. He never married, and I'm still hoping maybe he will find the one. But he comes a lot, and he loves it. He's a great help in opening, closing, and just enjoying every minute of being here. And my younger guy married a girl. She's a New Jersey girl, and she was raised on the Jersey Shore, so she likes the ocean. So they come once a year, twice a year, but she
And
doesn't.
it's a long ride.
She doesn't have the passion for the Berkshires that everybody. I hoped it would be infectious and I could snag her, but it didn't work quite that way. And she and my son have 3 children, a 10-year-old little boy. Well, actually, he just turned 11 last week, and 2 little twin girls. And they are cute and adorable, and they love to fish and they love to swim, and they actually have a really great time when they come. It's a long trek for them to get here, and the Jersey Shore is a little bit closer, so I lose on that one, which makes me a little sad.
Can you
Huh?
move your chair a little bit? Because your son is, yeah, let's see.
Going to be sitting on your
My
lap.
son lives in Santa Fe, and he has his family there, but it's also a big trek to come here, so I go there. And my daughter, of course, lives here with us, and so I see her all the time. My granddaughter lives in Vancouver. She just got her doctorate. And actually, she got a job at Northeastern, so I get to see her a little bit. But she's all over the world, but we get a lot of pleasure from that. And I guess that's about it with our kids.
Yes.
We have Tommy's children. I mean, my cousin is across the road there, and it's so nice to
It's
be
a
with the little
huge,
ones.
huge amount of children.
Yes,
Well, they started out with 4 children, and when we
well,
together.
4 children,
Right.
but only 2 are married,
Right.
and they have 4 children.
Right. So
But now we're getting boyfriends. The twins are getting older, and they're all graduated from college, and they're all settled in nice jobs, and they bring different boys. We get to meet different people all the time. Makes it exciting.
well, I know the Clarens have one daughter, Jody, that loves to be here. The Gelbards got
Yeah.
here, and they loved it so much that his children bought a house across the lake. So that's very nice. Ellen Cavisto still lives in the same house. The Rotundas, Leela Rotunda, still lives in the same house that her parents.
Carnesi.
Carneses, well, they don't have the same house they were raised in, but they're still here owning property, and they have a lot of parties, and on a big weekend, holiday weekend, Carnesi people outnumber the Lads Beach members. There are so many Carnesi members.
Well, there were 5 children, and
Right.
they've all
Right.
have grandchildren. Not all, but
So,
quite a few of them do.
and
So that's the
Jamie
old group.
Bogdanov's wife, Robin, she's still here. and
their
owns her
daughter.
mother-in-law's house and a house that she and Jamie shared behind it. So a lot of the people that grew up here love it. I know Beth Hoffman still comes, Betty May still comes, and she loves it, and she visits, and she every once in a while considers maybe purchasing a home to be back because she misses it so
The
much.
Hoffman's house was sold, right? But the
No,
twins,
right now, huh?
The
Twin,
twin.
huh?
twin Hoffman girls.
Twin Hoffman
Twin
girls are
and
not here.
Mark and
Mark,
Betty.
there were
There
four children.
children. Mark died.
He passed
and,
away. Yeah.
Betty May comes
Is
up
the baby.
because she's very good friends.
And then the two twins.
They're
and the
in the
twin
middle,
girls,
but
yes.
they are not so interested in being here. But Betty loves it. Betty May or Beth, she's changed her name legally. Beth
Yeah, right.
comes a lot, and she and Ellen Cavisto were still very, very good friends and in touch. So she at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, she and Tim and her kids are here. So that's a very nice thing to see her. And who else?
I think she'll be back eventually.
Yeah, I think she will actually be back, yes, because she's very, very much in love with the Berkshires and Sylvan Road, for sure.
Well,
What
she was
else?
an infant when she
Oh,
came.
yeah.
She was an infant.
Yeah, yeah. And going down the road, which other children are still here on this road?
Nobody else.
Nobody.
They were,
I
they're
think
new.
I
All
think
the rest of
everybody
them,
else are
Levitt,
all
Miller, all the
New owners,
band.
different families, but yeah.
So how does it feel in terms of friendships and social life
In
and
terms of
culture?
friendships and social life, I'll be very honest. Henry Rydberg had owned a little house. They used to call it the Shack, and it was very rural next to us. And he was a sweet man, and his wife also, Anne Rydberg, was an artist. I
She
don't
was
know if
an
you-
artist.
She was very talented. In fact, we have one of her pictures, a picture of how our house looked way back when in 1956, is hanging right in back of us. And so they sold it to a family, Simons, and they tore it down and built. Okay, you can do that.
McVeigh's
Hmm?
McVeigh's don't
Yeah, yeah. That's it, I think. Oh, there you go.
Yes. There it is.
Let me see.
It's my father's.
Actually, it already has one room that was added, which was my parents' bedroom. Originally, it was just a little bungalow with just two
Just a
bedrooms.
ranch. It was just
A ranch, right, it was tiny. And so my parents added a bedroom, so my brother and I didn't have to share a bedroom because I guess that was not politically correct even back when. So there that is.
When was this done? Do you remember?
Pardon?
When
was
was this done?
When was this done? I would say,
No.
no, this is Rydberg. I would say.
Let's see, she used to,
She used to make little miniatures and go to garage sales and, whatever.
so Nancy is 51.
Huh?
And Anne used to be painting then. Nancy's 51, so we're talking.
Oh, Anne painted for years.
I
and
know, but when
years.
she did that house.
Oh, this, I don't know. This was pre-Totem Pole. This was pre-Nancy. This goes back. Maybe this
when I
goes
was
back
babysitting,
to
when I was young.
either 59 or 60, something like that, I think.
And those are the Can you show it again?
Show it
It's
again.
earlier than
and then,
60,
And then
Janet.
show us the steps that you talked about
Oh,
earlier.
yeah, here are
Yeah,
those
those-
steps that Henry Rydberg used to cut. That was
And
another thing,
yourselves.
that this birch tree that's no longer there, it had an A carved on it when my parents purchased it, and my mother's name was Anna, and she felt that that was like an
It should
omen
be-
from above, that this was the house she had to have, because there was a tree with her initial carved in it. So there is Anna's birch tree, right there, yeah. And since then, we've added a whole bunch of other rooms, and now it's a lot of work to clean all those rooms. So I almost wish it were tiny again, like it used to be. The other thing that we have in the house, in terms of pictures that might be interesting, is I have a picture that Lenny Weber painted of the general store. I have an original when I realized that he was on in years, and since he's been a local Monterey artist for forever, I realized that I wanted to have one of his pictures before I couldn't have one. So Lenny picked out, had several pictures of the general store, and was nice enough to share one of his pictures that I do treasure.
Okay,
So
I need you to, unfortunately, I need you to start all over again with the Lenny Weber story.
The
So
Lenny
in
Weber
the house,
story.
there is a picture.
Yeah, I also have another picture that Lenny Weber, who is probably the longest local artist. And when I realized he was on in years and I might not be able to have one the next year, I begged Lenny to sell me one of his pictures, and we went through very, very carefully all the pictures, and I bought a picture of the general store that Lenny painted. So that to me is quite a treasure to own, to have a house picture in my house that Lenny painted, because I've known him for a lot of years, so that's nice to have.
Tommy and Laura gave me a painting
Oh,
for
did
my
they?
wedding,
Yeah.
which I have in Florida that Lenny did.
Did he? Yeah.
But of the village, of the Monterey village.
Right. Well,
I have a couple.
a lot of
those.
memories. We had 2 camps on the lake, Glenmere and Jason, and the other one was
Meadowlark,
Meadowlark.
that wasn't on the lake. That
So-
was up on Oxbow Road.
Well, there were 2 on the water.
Glenmere was girls.
One was a co-ed camp, and one was
Jason was co-ed, was Monterey one side, and I forgot what the girls' side was.
and a lot of activity, a lot of kids from the city would come, and
Yes.
I think big bucks to attend a camp like that.
Yeah.
My cousin actually went to one of the girls' camps one year, and I
They had
rode.
horseback riding, which was a real.
They had water skiing, they had tennis, they had archery, and again, it was so close, and yet it was so far because you couldn't go in. And I was so looking for some friends, and here were these huge camps with tons of kids that were my age, and yet you had no access to them or they to you, which was
Well, when you walk down Hoopla, we
Hoopla,
could go
right.
to Glenmere. I used to take Nancy because she
right.
rode. Paul Winters owned that,
Yes,
and he was kind.
Paul Winter and Sonny was his wife.
Sonny, right?
Right.
Yeah, Sonny died before him. Way
Yeah,
before
yeah,
him.
yeah. But anyway, my cousin attended one of these camps one summer, and at the end of the summer, I got on a bus and rode home with her, and went home to her house to spend a week on Fire Island. So that was my exposure to summer camp. I never went to camp because I was in
Here.
the Berkshires for the summer. So that was as close as I got to being a camper on anything that was on this lake. But
Did you guys hang out with the camp counselors?
yeah.
Yes, we did.
I didn't. One guy, the water skiing instructor,
Yes.
drove by, and he would stop and he would talk to me, and he asked me out, and I said, gee, I don't know, I'll have to ask my parents. And my parents said, what are you, crazy? She's 13 or 14 years old, there's no way that's happening. And that was the last time.
Janet Gottlieb went out.
Yeah,
and
Janet Gottlieb,
She
yeah,
went
yeah.
and she learned how to water ski from him,
Oh,
and then
right,
she
okay.
became a counselor the next year.
Okay.
And then she came back here and taught us all how to water ski.
Okay, there you have it.
But you see, everyone used to stop at our house because we were at the top of the hill with the stone wall, and all the campers, that was a resting place, and my grandmother would go out with food because they would cry that they didn't eat well. And she'd bring out cookies and sandwiches, and it was interesting. We got to meet a lot of people, and
They
a
would
lot
take
of the
a hike
parents.
to the general store to buy supplies.
And park the
Yeah,
almonds.
yeah.
Yeah, they went to buy candy.
And once in a while, twice a year, they would go into the original Friendlies, and they would get awful awfuls, which
Oh,
are
yes.
now fribbles, but they used to call them awful awfuls, and that you can't drink more
We
than
used
one.
to be allowed to ride in the mail truck into Great Barrington. That was our transportation to Great Barrington. We left when the mail left Monterey in the morning. We sat in the back of the truck. We were dropped off at Melvin's Pharmacy. And
Well, I
then
never
we
did
had
this.
the day I'm
Yeah.
older than you.
Yeah,
We had
that's
the
true.
day in town. I was with Cookie and
Yeah, I did.
and we'd stay in Great Barrington, do anything we wanted. There was Grants, there was 5 and 10, there was all kinds of places for us to keep busy. And then we would come back on the 2:30 run. I think we had to be back at Melvin's and we all got an ice cream cone there, and then we get on the truck and come back.
Come back.
And that was like once a week we do that.
Yeah, well, my mother, you're talking about brave, would stay, with this party line and with no car.
Yeah, my mother
And we were
too.
dependent on Dora Fisher. She had a car.
Thank goodness for
And
Dora.
Dora, God bless her, would come and take my mother to town to grocery shop once a week or to do laundry, or both. And so that was our mode of transportation. If we needed anything or wanted to go anyplace, Dora would do it. Once in a while, she would take us to Sandusfield and we'd go blueberry
Oh
picking.
yeah, we did that.
And once in a while, we'd go to
To
Williamstown, go to the Clark Institute, and eat in the 1876 house or
Right, down
something,
Mill
some
on the
restaurant.
Floor.
I don't know,
Mill
huh? Something like that.
Mhm.
We would stop at it, and that was big time for
Right.
us to have an outing like that. And
We
she was
used to
very
go blueberry
generous.
picking on Mount Greylock every year, the first week of
Oh,
August,
okay,
because my
okay.
dad was on
We'd go to-
vacation. He would take us up there and we'd have a
Otis.
picnic, and we'd do the Mohawk Trail. That was
Right.
another day's trip. We did a lot of nice things.
Yeah. No, it was one. It still is wonderful. It's different. It's just different, but not bad.
There's not the same camaraderie as there was when we were growing up, because our parents used to come down to Ladd's Beach,
Right.
and that's how all the social life used to start.
Well, I think it was also before everybody went green. I think now, politically and ecology-wise, people are very invested in their own little niche, whatever that might be. So I think everybody's fractioned into what it could be like Garfield and the weeds, which definitely needs some attention. Other people are very interested in supervising the lake, since we no longer have, I read in the local paper, we don't have a harbor master.
Dean Amador
So they
was the
want
harbor
somebody to
master
come
forever.
and issue out tickets to people. So everybody has a different agenda, and some people are very passionate about their agendas, and I think it's hard because you can't legislate morality or a conscience. So there is some dissension in what one person wants to hammer in that might have many wonderful points of interest somebody else doesn't buy. I know just on our road alone, we had a road that was not accessible to the fire department to get in. We had too much overgrowth, too much canopy of trees, and we had a big meeting at Ladd's, and Sean Tryon came in and tried to explain that it really is critical for everybody's welfare that these trucks for emergencies have access to our road. And everybody said, well, how much is that going to cost? And there were a lot of people that I was really surprised, were so adamantly opposed to having to spend any money at all, because
Not only that, or to remove a tree.
that was another issue, removing some trees so they could have that access to turn their trucks around. So everybody has just a little bit of a tweaked different idea on what they think they would like. So I think that's a little bit challenging. I think that would be the word I would use, challenging. I don't think anybody's wrong and anybody's 100% right, but it's just everybody isn't on the same page with where they're going, with their money, with their pocketbook, or with their commitment of heart. So that makes it a little difficult, I think. So I think that's very different. And I think Monterey right now has a winter population of under 1,000. I think the last census, it's over 1,000 now, winter population. But it must
This in the book, it's
easily double or triple in the summer.
nice.
So you have a lot of people and a lot of different ideas. I think it's also a little bit sad that some of the local people that have been here forever, their children probably can't afford real estate to buy in a community where they've been raised, because the summer dollar has inflated it so, and yet I think the summer dollar probably has been a great help to many projects that Monterey has.
They've changed the zoning now
Right,
to help that
right,
situation.
right.
So, in-law apartments,
Right,
outbuildings.
Right, so I think that's
They're gonna
a
be
fairer, more equitable way to
It's
make,
children, but it's also aging.
Yeah, and the same would apply to boats coming onto the lake. I mean, this is a lake that should be shared. It's Monterey's lake. It's everybody, and it's not. And
Owned
it's
by the state.
it's very difficult for local people to have access to get a boat for a day's fishing on this lake.
You know,
It's-
Mr. Kenny had the for 100 years.
right. Kenny's
You know,
Grove,
and that's
right.
gone. So, and
makes-
it is dangerous how it's operated
Yes,
now. I
yes.
mean, I know they're doing it because people need an access, but I just think it's frightening when you see the little children on the beach and the mothers are
And the
talking and
queues
they're not
right.
seeing, and
it's,
you know,
it's twofold.
got to be careful.
So I think that
But it's
is-
still the best place in the world. I mean, I think that this is like a little piece of heaven. We're very grateful to be here and to still enjoy it after all these years with our families.
And here comes the tugboat.
Well, oh, there you go. I think that's our new neighbor. Their boat has, I think that's Oppenheimer. I think, or
He
maybe
used to
not.
own Uncle George and Nana's house.
Yeah. But it's not. It's
Is
somebody
that-
else. That's the other thing about the small lake versus the large lake. I don't know hardly two families on the large lake because we're the small lake. So I know most of the people on the small lake, you know, maybe not intimately, but at least by name or by sight, say hello. But people in the big lake, I don't know who they are, which is, and some of the houses are huge. I cannot believe the size and the cost of some of the houses that have been put up on that.
John Camp still has his mom and dad's house.
I don't
John
know.
has both places.
Does he?
Who was that?
Pippa.
John Camp, Pip.
Pippa.
Oh, Pip. Okay, I never knew what his
He
name
has
was. Yeah,
Betsy and
yeah.
Jack's house.
Right.
And he has his grandparents'
Right,
house.
right.
Yeah,
He
he
goes
was
back
left the
and forth.
grandparents.
Yeah, well, that's
His
fine.
grandparents live in the condo next. They lived in the condo next to me in Florida.
The White Stones.
Yeah, it was so funny when I've been down there 24 years, and I was marketing one day, and I turned around and there's Betsy, and I said, "What are you doing here?"
You're visiting
She
your
said,
parents.
and then I saw
Yeah.
Mrs. Whitestone, and she said, "You know, she lives right over the bridge." I said, "Really? Where does she live?" And she said, "Oh, she lives in Breakwater Tower."
The 6 degrees of separation. Everybody knows somebody from someplace.
And
that is,
and
yeah.
Pippa used to always bring Grandma back and forth. He was a good grandson. really
He
was.
lived it. He went to University of Miami.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was my water skiing teacher.
Oh.
He taught us how.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. The Gilbards have that kind of tied up on the small lake. I know Alyssa and her brother Randy have been instrumental in teaching more
Yes,
kids
yes.
how to water ski in the last 10 years than any other family. They make sure that all the kids get a shot at trying to ski.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Yes, thank you for